Hi, I'm Samantha Fink, and I'm the proud representative of Dunster House.
And I'm Stephanie Botello, your class treasurer from Lowell House. Harvard's hallowed halls have always been known for its traditions, like last call scorpion bull races, primal scream, and simply being better than Yale. The Harvard class of 1968 created a new tradition by becoming the first to invite their own class day speaker. Since then, Harvard has hosted speakers that have been leaders in almost every field, from politicians to writers to comedians to sports legends.
Previous Class Day speakers have included Arthur Miller,
Mother Teresa,
Conan O'Brien,
Mother Teresa,
Bono,
Mother Teresa,
Seth MacFarlane,
and Mother Teresa.
This year, we are excited and honored to add our 42nd President of the United States, President William Jefferson Clinton, to the list. Oh. Elected to the presidency in 1992 and re-elected in 1996, President Clinton's administration was marked by unprecedented economic growth, welfare reform, and a federal budget surplus. In office, he also focused on providing tax relief for working families, increasing investment in education, and protecting the environment.
Since his 2 terms in office, President Clinton has focused on his philanthropic work through the William J. Clinton Foundation. Spearheading 6 separate initiatives, the Clinton Foundation works to address some of the world's most pressing challenges, including the HIV/AIDS epidemic, climate change, international development, and American obesity amongst children. The Clinton Global Initiative, an annual conference in New York, has resulted in more than $10 billion in commitments to support innovative solutions to a number of global issues.
President Clinton and tomorrow's commencement speaker, Bill Gates, have worked tirelessly to fight AIDS in the developing world. They appeared together at the 2005 Time Global Health Summit and traveled together to Africa last summer. The Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative has expanded access to antiretroviral drugs for over 500,000 people in 62 developing countries.
A Georgetown graduate and Rhodes Scholar, prior to running for office, President Clinton spent an unfortunate 3 years at Yale Law School before serving as Governor of Arkansas, Attorney General of Arkansas, and Chairman of the National Governors Association. Let's give a warm Harvard welcome to President Bill Clinton.
Thank you very much, Samantha, Stephanie, Chris, all the marshals, all the student speakers. Thanks for the gags and the jokes. And you know, when I got invited to do this, it was humbling in some ways. And they asked Bill Gates to be the commencement speaker. He's got more money than I do, and he went to Harvard. And I brought my friend Glenn Hutchins here with me, who's at his 30th reunion, and he had something to do with overseeing the endowment, and he explained that Gates was really, really, really rich, and I was just rich. And then I thought, well, the students asked me, and that's good, and besides, I don't have to wear a robe. But I couldn't figure out why, on what is supposed to be a festive and informal day, you would pick a gray-haired 60-year-old to speak. Following the great tradition of Al Franken, Will Ferrell, Borat or Ali G or whoever he was that day, Conan O'Brien, that Family Guy person, you know. What a tradition. So I did like Talladega Nights, however. Then I thought, you know, then I was reading all I could find out about the class, and I thought, well, they don't want to have any fun today. They already had fun. They had this class-wide risk tournament around exam time. And I understood when I heard the followership speech, I understood why you had that. Now you can all run for president. You played Risk. It's an 8-year Risk tournament. Then I thought, well, maybe it's because you're about to name Drew Faust your next president, and I think women should run everything now. Then I figured maybe it was just because Robin Williams and Billy Crystal turned you down. But for whatever reason, we're here, and I have had a really good time. You've already heard most of what you need to hear today, I think. But I want to focus for a minute on the fact that these graduating classes since 1968 have invited a few non-comedians. The first was Martin Luther King, who was killed in April before. I remember that very well because it was my senior year at Georgetown. He was killed in April before he could come and give the speech. And Coretta came and gave the speech for him here. And you've had Mother Teresa and you've had Bono. What do they all have in common? They are symbols of our common humanity and a rebuke even to humorous cynicism. Martin Luther King basically said he lived the way he did because we were all caught in what he called an inescapable web of mutuality. Nelson Mandela, the world's greatest living example of that, I believe, comes from a tribe in South Africa, the Xhosa, who call it Ubuntu. In English, I am because you are. That led Mother Teresa from Albania to spend her life with the poorest people on earth in Calcutta. It led Bono from his rock stage to worry about innocent babies dying of AIDS and poor people with good minds who never got a chance to follow their dreams. This is a really fascinating time to be a college senior. I was looking at all of you wishing I could start over again and thinking, I'd let you be president if you'd let me be 21. I'd take a chance on making it all over again if I could do it again. But I mean, just think what an exciting time it is. All this explosion of knowledge. Just in the last couple of weeks before I came here, I read that thanks to the sequencing of the human genome, the ongoing research has identified 2 markers which seem to be high predictors of diabetes, which, as you heard, is a very important thing to me because it's now predicted that 1 in 3 children born in the United States in this decade will develop diabetes. We run the risk that we could be raising the first generation of kids to live shorter lives than their parents. Not because we're hungry, but because we don't eat the right things and we don't exercise. But this is a big deal. Then right after that, I saw that through our powerful telescopes, we have identified a planet orbiting one of the 100 stars closest to our solar system that appears to have the atmospheric conditions so similar to ours that life could actually be possible there. Alas, even though it's close to us in terms of the great universe, it's still 20 million light years away, unreachable in the lifetime of any young person. So unless there's a budding astrophysicist in the class that wants to get married in a hurry and then commit 3 generations and take another couple with him, we'll have to wait for them to come to us. It's an exciting time. It's also exciting because of all the diversity. If you look around this audience, I was thinking, I wonder how different this crowd would have looked if someone like me had been giving this speech 30 years ago. And how much more interesting it is for all of us. It's frustrating time because for all the opportunity, there's a lot of inequality, there's a lot of insecurity, and there's a lot of instability and unsustainability. Half the world's people still live on less than $2 a day. 1 billion on less than $1 a day. 1 billion people go to bed hungry tonight. 1 billion people won't get a clean glass of water today or any day in their lives. 1 in 4 of all the people who die this year will die from AIDS, TB, malaria, and infections related to dirty water. Nobody in America dies of any of that except people whose AIDS medicine doesn't work anymore, or people who decline to follow the prescribed regimes. In the United States, in the last decade, we have had 6 years of economic growth, an all-time high in the stock market, a 40-year high in corporate profits. Workers are doing better every year with productivity, but median wages are stagnant. And there's actually been, in all this so-called recovery, a 4% increase in the percentage of people working full-time falling below the poverty line, and a 4% increase in the percentage of people working who, with their families, have lost their health insurance. It's an unequal time. It's an uncertain, insecure time because we're all vulnerable to terror, to weapons of mass destruction, to global pandemics like avian influenza. We all make fun of the modern media and culture all the time, but I thought it was interesting. In my little house in Chappaqua, where I stay home alone, rooting for the candidate, I watched the evening news in the last few months, and it's interesting. Somehow clawing its way through the stories of the latest crime endeavor in our neighborhood and whether Britney Spears' hair has grown out or not. I have learned that there were chickens in Romania, India, and Indonesia identified with avian influenza, and that every chicken within 3 square miles, those unfortunate ones, was eradicated. On the evening news, competing with Britney Spears in crime. Why? That's a good thing, because of the shared insecurity we feel. You all saw it this week in all the stories about the terrorist attack being thwarted in Kennedy Airport. I remember a few months ago, everybody I knew was shaking their head when we found out that there was a plot in London to put explosive chemicals in a baby bottle to make it look like formula to evade the airport inspections. And every time I asked somebody, I said, "Did you feel a chill go up and down your spine?" They said, "Yeah, they did." Because they can imagine being on the airplane. Or in my case, I can imagine my daughter, who has to travel a lot on her job, being on the airplane. But here's what I want to tell you about that. The inequality is fixable, and the insecurity is manageable. We're going to really have to go some in the 21st century to see political violence claim as many innocent lives as it did in the 20th century. Keep in mind, you had, 12 million people killed in World War I, somewhere between 15 and 20 million in World War II, 6 million in the Holocaust, 6 million Jews, 3 million others, 20 million in the political purges in the former Soviet Union between the 2 world wars and one afterward, 2 million in Cambodia alone, millions in tribal wars in Africa, an untold but large number in the Chinese Cultural Revolution. I mean, we're going to have to really get after it if you expect your generation to claim as many innocents from political violence as was claimed in the 20th century. The difference is you think it could be you this time because of the interdependence of the world. So yes, it's insecure, but it's manageable. It's also an unsustainable world because of climate change, resource depletion, and the fact that between now and 2050, the world's supposed to grow from 6.5 to 9 billion people, with most of the growth in the countries least able to handle it under today's conditions, never mind those. That's all fixable too. So is climate change a problem? Is resource depletion a problem? Is poverty and the fact that 130 million kids never go to school and all this disease that I work on a problem? You bet. It is. But I believe the most important problem is the way people think about it and each other and themselves. The world is awash today in political, religious, almost psychological conflicts, which require us to divide up and demonize people who aren't us. And every one of them, in one way or the other, is premised on a very simple idea, that our differences are more important than our common humanity. I would argue that Mother Teresa was asked here, Bono was asked here, and Martin Luther King was asked here because this class believed that they were people who thought our common humanity was more important than our differences. And so look, this Harvard degree and your incredible minds and your spirits that I've gotten a little sense of today, this gives you virtually limitless possibilities. But you have to decide how to think about all this and what to do with your own life in terms of what you really think. I hope that you will share Martin Luther King's dream, embrace Mandela's spirit of reconciliation, support Bono's concern for the poor, and follow Mother Teresa's life into some active service. Ordinary people have more power to do public good than ever before because of the rise of non-governmental organizations, because of the global media culture, because of the internet, which gives people of modest means the power, if they all agree, to change the world. When former President Bush and I were asked to work on the tsunami before we did the Katrina work, Americans, many of whom could not find the Maldives or Sri Lanka on a map, gave $1.2 billion to tsunami aid. 30% of our households gave, half of them gave over the internet. Which means you don't even have to be rich to change the world if enough people agree with you. But we have to do this. Citizen service is a tradition in our country about as old as Harvard, and certainly older than the government. Benjamin Franklin organized the first volunteer fire department in Philadelphia 40 years before the Constitution was ratified. When de Tocqueville came here in 1835, he talked, among other things, about how he was amazed that Americans just were always willing to step up and do something, not wait for someone else to do it. Now we have in America 1,010,000 non-governmental groups, not counting 355,000 religious groups, most of whom are involved in some sort of work to help other people. India has 1 million registered, over 500,000 active. China has 280,000 registered and twice that many not registered because they don't want to be confined. Russia has 400,000, so many that President Putin is trying to restrict them. I wish he wouldn't do that, but it's a high-class problem. There were no NGOs in Russia or China when I became president in 1993. All over the world, we have people who know that they can do things to change. But again, I will say to all of you, there is no challenge we face, no barrier to having your grandchildren here on this beautiful site 50 years from now, more profound than the ideological and emotional divide which continues to demean our common life and undermine our ability to solve our common problems. The simple idea that our differences are more important than our common humanity. When the human genome was sequenced, and the most interesting thing to me as a non-scientist, we finished it my last year I was president, I really rode hard on this thing and kept throwing more money at it. The most interesting thing to me was the discovery that in this human beings with their 3 billion genomes are 99.9% identical genetically. So if you look around this vast crowd today at the military caps and the baseball caps and the cowboy hats and the turbans, If you look at all the different colors of skin, all the heights, all the widths, all the everything, it's all rooted in 0.1% of our genetic makeup. Don't you think it's interesting that not just people you find appalling, but all of the rest of us spend 90% of our lives thinking about that 0.1%? I mean, don't we all? How much of the laugh lines in the speeches were about that? At least I didn't go to Yale, right? That Brown gag was hilarious. Right? All those things. But it's all the same deal, isn't it? I mean, the intellectual premise is that the only thing that really matters about our lives are the distinctions we can draw. Indeed, one of the crassest elements of modern culture, all these sort of talk shows and even a lot of political journalism that sort of focus on this kind of shallow judgmentalism that try to define everybody down by the worst moment in their lives. And it all is about, well, no matter whatever's wrong with me, I'm not that. And yet, you ask Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, and Bono to come here. Nelson Mandela is the most admired person in the world. I got tickled the other night. I wound up at a restaurant in New York with a bunch of friends of mine, and I looked over at 2 tables away, and there was Rush Limbaugh, and who said a few mad things about me. So I went up and shook hands with him and said hello and met his dinner guest. And I came just that close to telling him we were 99.9% the same. But I didn't want to ruin the poor man's dessert, so I let it go. Now, we're laughing about this, but next month I'm making my annual trek to Africa to see the work of my AIDS and development projects and to celebrate with Nelson Mandela his birthday. He's 89, don't know how many more he'll have. And when I think that I might be 99.9% the same as him, I can't even fathom it. So I say that to you. Do we have all these other problems? Is Darfur a tragedy? Do I wish America would adopt sensible climate change regulations? Do I hate the fact that ideologues in the government doctored scientific reports? Do I disagree with the 1,000 things that are going on? Absolutely. But it all flows from the idea that we can violate elemental standards of learning and knowledge and reason and even the humanity of our fellow human beings because our differences matter more. That's what makes you worship power over purpose. Our differences matter more. One of the greatest things that's happened to me in the last few years is doing all this work with former President Bush. You know, I ought to be doing this. I'm healthy and not totally antiquated. He's 82 years old, still jumping out of airplanes and still doing stuff like this. And I love the guy. I'm sorry for all the diehard Democrats in the audience. I just do. And life is all about seeing things new every day. And I'll just close with 2 stories, one from Asia, one from Africa. And I'm telling you, all the details don't matter as much as this. After George Bush and I did the tsunami, we got so into this disaster work that Kofi Annan asked him to oversee the UN's efforts in Pakistan after the earthquake, which you acknowledged today, and asked me to stay on as the tsunami coordinator for 2 years. So on my next to last trip to Aceh in Indonesia, by far the hardest hit place, 250,000 people killed, I went to one of these refugee camps where in the sweltering heat, several thousand people were still living in tents, highly uncomfortable. And my job was to go there and basically listen to them complain and figure out what to do about it and how to get them out of there more quickly. So every one of these camps elected a camp leader. And when I appeared, I was introduced to my young interpreter, young Indonesian woman, and to the guy who was the camp leader, and his wife and his son. And they smiled, said hello. And then I looked down at this little boy, and I literally could not breathe. I think he's the most beautiful child I ever saw. And I said to my young interpreter, I said, I believe that's the most beautiful boy I ever saw in my life. She said, yes, he's very beautiful. And before the tsunami, he had 9 brothers and sisters, and now they're all gone. So the wife and the son excused themselves. And the father, who had lost his 9 children, proceeded to take me on a 2-hour tour of this camp. He had a smile on his face. He never talked about anything but what the people in that camp needed. He gave no hint of what had happened to him and the grief that he bore. We get to the end of the tour. It's the health clinic in the camp. I look up, and there is his wife, a mother who'd lost 9 of her 10 children, holding a little bitty baby less than a week old, the newest born baby in the camp. And she told me, I'm going to get in trouble for telling this. She told me that in Indonesian culture, when a woman has a baby, she gets to go to bed for 40 days and everyone waits on her hand and foot. She doesn't get up, nothing happens. And then on the 40th day, the mother gets up out of bed, goes back to work and doing her life, and they name the baby. So this child was less than a week old. So this mother who had lost her 9 children is here holding this baby, and she says to me, this is our newest born baby, and we want you to name him, little boy. So I looked at her and I said through my interpreter, I said, do you have a name for New Beginning? And she explained, and the woman said something back, and the interpreter said, yes, luckily for you, in Indonesian, the word for dawn is a boy's name. And the mother just said to me, we will call this child Dawn, and he will symbolize our new beginning. You shouldn't have to meet people that lose 9 of their 10 children, cherish the one they got left, and name a newborn baby Dawn to realize that what we have in common is more important than what divides us. And I leave you with this thought. When Martin Luther King was invited here in 1968, the country was still awash in racism. The next decade, it was awash in sexism, and after that, in homophobia. And occasionally, those things rear their ugly head along the way. But by and large, nobody in this class is going to carry those chains around through life. But nobody gets out for free, and everyone has temptations. The great temptation for all of you is to believe that the 1/10 of 1% of you which is different and which brought you here and which can bring you great riches or whatever else you want is really the sum of who you are, and that you deserve your good fate and others deserve their bad one. That is the trap into which you must not fall. Warren Buffett's just about to give away 99% of his money because he said most of it he made because of where he was born and when he was born. It was a lucky accident. And his work was rewarded in this time and place more richly than the work of teachers and police officers and nurses and doctors and people who cared for those who deserved to be cared for. So he's just going to give it away. And still, with less than 1% left, have more than he could ever spend. Because he realizes that it wasn't all due to the 1/10 of 1%. And that his common humanity requires him to give money to those for whom it will mean much more. In the Central Highlands in Africa, where I work, when people meet each other walking, nearly nobody rides, when people meet each other walking on the trails, and one person says, hello, how are you, good morning, the answer is not, I'm fine, how are you? The answer translated into English is this: I see you. Think of that. I see you. How many people do all of us pass every day that we never see? You know, when we all haul out of here, somebody's going to come in here and fold up 20-something thousand chairs and clean off whatever mess we live here and get ready for tomorrow. And then after tomorrow, somebody will have to fix that. Many of those people feel that no one ever sees them. I would never have seen the people in Aceh in Indonesia if a terrible misfortune had not struck. And so I leave you with that thought. Be true to the tradition of the great people who have come here. Spend as much of your time and your heart and your spirit as you possibly can thinking about the other 99.9%. See everyone and realize that everyone needs new beginnings. Enjoy your good fortune. Enjoy your differences. But realize that our common humanity matters much, much more. God bless you and good luck.